We're live. We are live with our guest, Jim Gibbons. Jim, I appreciate you taking the time out to do this. You're busy. I mean, you're all over the country doing announcing, things like that. But at the same time, you're busy promoting the duel, what we brought you here to talk about. 1986, the series that kind of happened that kind of launched something else at the end of that year. But we brought you to talk about that, and because I've been a long time, just Iowa wrestling fan in general, whether it's Iowa State or the Hawkeyes. When I saw this come out, I was a little confused at first, like just kind of like the duel. What does this all mean? Like, what are they talking about the duel? And so seeing what you put out and looking at some of the clips that were there, I was instantly hooked. So Jim, I appreciate you taking the time out to join us. Let's talk about the 1986 duel docuseries. Six parts. So it sounds like this started from is it Jim Myers, right?
Well, thank you for allowing me to come on your podcast. I dig your music there. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Kind of a Southern
Appreciate
rock vibe there. So no, yeah, my good friend John Myers and I, and he's been a kind of one of my guys that the guy probably I knock all my you always got to have somebody go, how did we do here? How did I do here? What does this sound? You knock things off of. And during my broadcast career, which has really kind of been about 25 years or so, we actually, I think the first time I was actually on TV, I was actually in the Perry High School gym in Iowa here with my friend Sean Kenny. And we were doing a broadcast there in the what's now the junior high gym for the public access channel, just getting reps and just doing, just asked to help out. And that led to, got asked to help out with public television, and, the rest is history. But no, John was always been my guy. And John has a real successful career in visual effects. He's worked on the set of things like Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And, some big time things of Super Bowl commercials, and he's got a network of friends that really kind of helped us through all this. But really he was the creative, and directed and produced this, and we both kind of had a vision of how it'd go. We had a lot of communication with each other, and it's about a 3.5 year project. And the interviews, we got it started in 2020 when I was sitting on my roof, building a house. I remember I'm on my garage. I hadn't had my roof shingled yet, and I was standing up there, and he calls on a nice day after they canceled the wrestling tournament. It was like everybody was bumming in the sport. What do we do next? And you're taking calls from guys, and let's redo the tournament. Let's do this. Let's have a tournament outside the tournament, and what can we do? And it was like we call post wrestling shock syndrome. That period of time that you have after the NCAA before there's anything else. And usually makes your late March and early April up until Easter miserable. All right. So, but he came up with, they were closing Hollywood down, basically. Not Hollywood, but they're closing the film industry down when Tom Hanks got COVID.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that needs about 4 hours worth of sleep. And he'd just been down a rabbit hole, and he had watched on the Iowa State Archives site, the Iowa State this 86 duel.
Yeah.
So he calls me up the next day, and he goes, and I'm on the roof of my house, and he goes, what do you remember about that duel? Well, for me personally, it was kind of a bad memory because we won the meet, but and a lot of it, most of it was my fault, but as I just didn't stick with my instincts on training this team, and we kind of let the foot off the gas and didn't have the performance that we wanted. Meanwhile, Iowa goes totally the other way, right?
Yeah.
And so then he goes, well, this is one of the most dramatic meets I've ever seen. And I go, I started thinking about it. And then I said, well, I got out the phone, and I started thinking about it. And I started going through the weight classes. And I was like, oh heck, that guy was an NCAA runner-up. That guy was a national champion. Oh, this guy ended up being a national champion. And like before you know it, I got 12 guys that were counted up that won 16 national titles. Like, well, how many guys made the finals? Well, there's 29 guys that made the final. 29 times they made the finals. These 20 guys.
Yeah.
And there were some characters there, and so we talked again, and he kind of pestered on me for a while. I said, well, if we do it, we got to talk to everybody. Okay.
Yeah.
And he called my bluff, and that's where we are today. So,
I mean, you're talking COVID, obviously COVID times, as far as when you guys got this discussion started. So he was watching, and you and I kind of touched on this the last time that we talked on the phone. He was watching an old duel. So that was my access to be able to watch Iowa wrestling as well. You know, even back in a lot of times, I mean, we didn't get it up here. We had guys that were video recording stuff on VHS and bringing it back just to watch awesome duels, right? So you guys have a lot of, and I would say Iowa Public Television itself brought the game along, you know, as far as wrestling and viewing wrestling goes. What was that? How was that journey trying to get that information? Because I know sometimes getting video or just archival stuff that, I mean, obviously they own it, to get that. What type of
no, the people of the state of Iowa own it. All right.
Okay.
That's what you have to, that they've been claiming rights on this for a while, but public television is owned by the state. They have an appropriation. They part of the retirement plan. They're defended by the Attorney General's office. They so we went through this whole exercise where we had a production agreement, and it got, we had put the product together, 6 episodes in rough cut form, and the majority of so went to 9 states during COVID. Started our interview process in the Dan Gable Museum after they had had the Hall of Fame entries. We had Royce and Bill in the Hall of and Mark Linger. We had interviewed him there, and that's where we started. And then we started getting the interviews with all the guys in Iowa and Illinois area that were still there. And then we went basically throughout that fall to 8 to 9 different states. We went to Washington, California, Illinois, Ohio. We went to Indiana. Went out to Connecticut to see Ivan Mazel, who wrote the Sports Illustrated article for us. A lot of interviews, of course. We went to Arizona. We went to Colorado to see a couple guys. And so this isn't a bunch of folding chairs in front of wall mats.
Right.
We went to them and got a feel for how they're living their life at that point in time. And the cool thing about this is a lot of time, Gable and I sit down through the whole thing, and there's a lot of things that are really unique to the broadcast that you'll never see anywhere else. And that's just kind of the creativity of John with his special effects that, just picture yourself as you did. You've watched it how many times, Brad?
4 times. 4 times now.
It's amazing.
4 times.
Yeah. So
4 times.
But if you would have watched The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, all right, you probably watched that as well. If you like documentary and all that stuff on ESPN, 10-part docuseries they did on that. Well, wouldn't it have been nice if you saw, Michael Jordan sit down as he's looking at on the laptop.
Yes.
All right. And he's got a cocktail in his hand, all right, and he's looking at the laptop. You're looking at him look at the laptop. Yeah. We actually show you what he's looking at on the back of the laptop. Yep. And we actually coined that as Scony Visions. And so why is that? Is because I sent a rough cut out to Adam Darengowski, my friend, and he watched it with his friend Ron Fransconi. All right. So he liked it and pointed it out. So we called it Scony Vision. So that's you've never seen that anywhere else. I mean, right. Yeah. So but it takes a special effects guy to be able to go ahead and do that. So I mean, John's background is that he wrestled at Nebraska and grew up in Eagle Grove, Iowa, one of the cradles of wrestling in the state. Yep. And went over then wrestled during this time period. Wrestled in this nationals in '86 and '87. Yeah. And so he knew these guys as well. And like I said, these my best friends. So I was like we've traveled a lot together watching tournaments. following the sport, and he's been helped me out quite a bit with my my broadcast career.
Which is awesome as well. I love watching the duels when you're announcing. It's great. You and Shane, it's a blast to listen to.
We love Shane.
Yeah,
and Shane is in this. So
he is. So it's his appearance is uncanny.
Well, where we put him is right where he perfectly needs to be. We were thinking about how do we kind of bridge the gap between what was that era and all that that transpired, the thoughts 35 years later and all that stuff. And then then when we go to make the comparison, he's our look into.
Yeah. That's exactly what he did.
Good question, Greg Randall.
That was great. Just the way he cameoed into that whole scene was great. That was good. So when you're going through and you're obviously you're contacting these guys, and they're you're getting yeses and guys that are willing to talk about it. There are obviously guys who didn't fare very well that day. There are guys that didn't think they were going to and wound up faring well extremely that day. You were a young coach. It was your first year, and you guys were still 19-1. Like it's not like you guys were just like you were struggling. So the confidence level going into a duel like that has got to be pretty, I would say, welcoming. Like, hey, we can win this. Like there's no reason why we can't. So as you're talking,
that's certainly the way we thought about that. And give my background as far as the I won a national title in '81 and in '82 I was number one seed, got beat in the semifinals, and it's kind of funny how things like that end up helping me in my coaching career because I could get off the mat and be coaching the bottom position and helping guys, and because I saw that as one of the big areas where it's a great equalizer. People, they just want to go, let me up and go on the feet again. Okay. Hey, get your ass off the mat. All right. Prove that you have the goods to do that. All right.
Yeah.
And some guy who doesn't want to let you do it, that can it's one of the best ways to equalize the talent level and everything else is for what is the hidden thing about what happens on the mat. Yeah. And the reason why I bring that up is that, I was a recruiting coordinator as a coach, or as an assistant coach, right? So I recruited a lot of these guys, and or two of them are in my family, and like to think they're there because I was there. But the thing about it is that relationship, I think, helped me get the job at a young age, right? And so. So I knew, and it wasn't like somebody coming in from the outside or knew, whatever. I mean, these were existing relationships where I was helping train guys, and we were working our way through it. We had a staff that never worked together before when we brought in Ed Bannick, and and I think we do a good job of really kind of pointing to some of the things where he was really beneficial as far as helping our team in that era. And I think I look back at it and I go, we got 9 guys that got beat in that meet. Talk to us, especially and this isn't what and one of them was Matt Eglund. I don't think this ends up being what it is without Matt Eglund sitting down and talking to us. Yeah. And after 35 years later, he's the runner-up in the country the year before. He's one of the big reasons why Iowa won their 8th national title in a row. Right. And having to struggle and have a hard time making it the weight and all that stuff. And everybody gets that. Okay, it has been part of that era. That can take your mind in places. But the fact that he sat down with us, I really think it. He's basically Barry Davis who didn't get found. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
When you take a look at how his career ended, but he was tough and firing away right up until the end where he got caught. But his comments about it really kind of and the fact that he was chopping it up the rest of the 6 episodes, but 9 guys basically did the same thing. Got out there and talk with us. And for most part, they were one call closes, and I think that has a little bit to do with I think I got a trusted relationship in the community that,
Right.
we wanted to make this thing fun and cool because we really thought that, I particularly thought, that guys wrestling at the time that era, and I hope it's that way this way for the guys that are wrestling today, 35 years later, was so fun. It was it was tough, yes, and the workouts were, punishing and grueling, and the weight cutting and the grind and all that stuff. But gosh, the trips on the bus, the belly laughs before practice, the cutting up on. It just was just a different. It is to be part of one of these programs like this that we didn't didn't know at the time we're going to be national champions next year, but it was certainly our goal, and we thought we thought we were good enough to go over to Iowa City that year and win and beat our rival, but it's like it didn't materialize that way, but it kind of set the for us anyway. And even though the duel is not about the following year,
right,
and references it quite a bit, and so you got to you roll with that. But it laid a foundation of expectations that for us that so the next year we were just that much more mentally tough. And I think we
go ahead.
And so I you probably talk to the guys. Some of the guys didn't talk to us. Well, they all have their reasons. It's not for we wanted to make them look as good as possible, even if they, because it does. These were not casual relationships. They were not casual efforts to wrestle at this level. In these programs, there's tension. There's tension a lot of times to make the team. There's tension once you get there. Get somebody behind you. That type. That type of pressure is evident everywhere. You saw that with the wrestle off situation between Brad Penrith and Paul Glenn.
Glenn.
Paul Glenn was ranked third in the country or whatever, and they went with Penrith that year, and he ends up winning the national title. So it's like you got. But that's what happens in great programs. That's what you have. And I think that a little bit that's alluded to, but after 35, I was really proud of all the guys that got on camera and how complimentary that they were to their opponents, and how, you could tell that they thought about each other a lot. Over
for sure. I think Royce and
Billy.
I think those guys exemplified that in the. I mean, Royce said he hadn't even watched the match, so he was.
Well, yeah, and I don't think Joe watched the match either, So it's like Joe Gibbons watching his match with Kevin Dresser,
Yeah.
So, but you got the idea of what the rivalry was like. And I think we have Coach Gable like nobody's ever seen him before.
I want to talk about that because having met Dan Gable a couple times, I don't know him. I'm not a Dan Gable know-it-all by any means, but knowing the I wouldn't say secrecy, but how much he keeps in his pocket so people don't know things. We have a current coach, Jeff Machek, in Wisconsin that is kind of the same way. He keeps things close to the vest and doesn't want to expose too much. Watching Dan through the episodes and through the whole series, he talks like this a lot. He can tell that he's thinking about what he's talking about as he's putting it out. But how was that how did you guys reach out? Was it just a simple phone call with him too, saying, "Hey, we're doing this. We want to talk about it. Would you join us?" Was he just as excited about doing it, or was he apprehensive at first?
Well, I don't think Coach was we have a good relationship. I mean, it's not like because we both love wrestling, right? And if you love wrestling, I mean, you're one of his guys.
Right.
So it's like so I think that was it hard to get him to do this? I'd say in the totality, no. All right.
Okay.
We know how to get Dan to help participate. And hey, man, we're doing this documentary on this. And
yeah,
what year was that? You know,
yeah,
and but I think he, you know, after a while it became, you know, then all of a sudden it's out there and he remembers everything he said and all of
yeah,
that. But it's just, I think just as I was, the first time I sat down and watched this and saw myself on camera and watched the first episode,
yeah.
I was shaking like a leaf.
For you,
All right. Just
yeah,
to see this, I had to go. I watched it alone. John sent me the links and all that stuff. And it's like, you had to put so much into this, and you were there for 90%, 99% of the interviews. So you're sitting there
yeah,
going, okay, where are we going? What did John come up with? And I go, we kind of obviously had a format to deal with there, with starting
yeah.
off with Coach Gable and his relationship with Iowa State and his history there, our history, and
Hmm.
but mainly about him and how and then being a young coach, what was happening back then, and the
Yeah,
van ride up to
yeah,
Logan, Utah, and all that stuff that were these stories are told,
yep.
and and we ended up, that you just there's just a level of excitement about it, and I think that, you know, there was a misconception about this. I think because after the last hand is raised in this thing, all right,
Hmm.
um, there's 11 different story arcs that develop.
Correct.
Yeah, and so
That's correct.
it's just and that so it's not what you think it is,
Hmm.
and but it is, it's about wrestling. It's about wrestling and the thoughts of these men 35 years later, and
I th-
and
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 I think it's an encompassing story though as well, because you're talking when you're also talking about how these guys, like the relationship you have with the guys, and but these guys grew up together. Like we're
yeah,
talking about two Iowa teams that were stacked with Iowa guys.
yeah, there are 11 guys from the state of Iowa, but it goes beyond that. I mean, we remember wrestling in California and Montana and going there and wrestling with the Kistler family.
Yeah,
Okay, I wrestled Jackson in the finals of some tournament out in Montana, and I remember, we knew the Kistler family growing up. We knew, Dwayne Goldman. I had been, sophomore
yeah,
year, we're in his wrestling room, and he's like a 30-pounder, and I roll around with him. He's this gang-looking giraffe, you know,
yeah,
just like not moving the right way or whatever, and
yeah.
and then he sits down and he watches, guys that he tells the story about it, but just how it's never. It's just kind of funny how all the stories are intertwined,
Yeah.
um, I think, just even from the out of state guys and guys like the Hefferdens and their connections, and John being at St. Ed's now and
Yeah.
running that program. I mean, it's a lot of still relevant people, and which is it's pretty cool. I think that part of it's really really cool.
Extremely, extremely. In the environment that you were able to give these guys, like you said, you went to them. You weren't just sitting in a gym with some folding chairs. So you
Yeah, we
made it
couldn't
as
have got
comfortable as
everybody
possible.
unless we showed up at their doorstep in a lot of these situations. Okay,
Sure.
it would just, for some it would be, it's very easy to get Perry Summit to talk about, the best day he ever had on campus
Yeah.
in his hometown, right,
Right.
and on his porch, right, in
Yeah.
Indiana. Okay,
Yep.
and not so much easy with the other ones, but some of these interviews were after we got done doing Matt Eglin's interview,
Hmm.
which we just sat there and went, after it was over with, they 2 hours and 3 hours of shooting these interviews. We made a little joke about it. We weren't in shooting shape,
Hmm.
It's just like you just felt drained. And we weren't the one on cameras, but listening to these stories of these guys that we're talking about,
Yeah.
and then we get done with that one and we go over to do Greg Randall on the other side of the river at Iowa City at
Yeah.
the Memorial Union. And this is how this whole thing worked out, is that this is during COVID, so it's
Yep.
closed. And
Yeah.
so the guy that runs the union comes out, and we go, okay, we're busted here. We probably have to go ahead and break down and whatever. And John, if you see him, he's got the big long beard, he's got the long hair, the
Yep.
bun and all that stuff.
Yep.
Anyway, the guy that comes out to kind of talk to us out there and ask us what we're doing as we're shooting with Greg Randall, and we're like 3/4 the way done with this, is one of his college teammates. All right. So we just had things like that would happen just when
That's
it got
awesome.
tough, and just like ready, God, this is gonna. Then all of a sudden something like that would happen. We just get, it was almost it was divine guidance or whatever, but just something unique would just flip and happen and make it work, and it just got a little bit easier for us. But just that day of shooting, then we go over there and do the Greg Randall interview, and Greg's kind of an introverted guy and all that. But then when all of a sudden you saw him on camera, I go, holy cow! I go, was that as good as I thought it was? Because Greg Randall, in my mind, is the OW. I mean, people may not know who Greg Randall is, but from way back then, he's 2-time All-American, and had some big wins in his career against one against John Smith in the duel, and duel against Oklahoma State, and 2-time runner-up, and like I said, and a guy that was a 4-time state champion, a legend in the state of Iowa, and and he was so spot on. And that's the great thing about this. About as talk about Gable, is that this is just in the words of the 9 guys that nine guys that wrestled for him on one of his best teams. Yeah, it's not Gable talking about Gable, right? Even though there's a little bit of that, you get a little. He's not doing very much of that. It's those guys that were on those teams, and when I sat down with Coach Gable afterwards, and I said, when Dwayne Goldman says, he had a great sense of humor, he was everything he needed to be when he needed to be it. Dan perks up and goes, he said that, I go, Coach, this becomes about you, man. He can't help it.
That was something I noticed about Dan too.
The Iowa fans, that you run into, and they're visibly uncomfortable after the first episode that we screened this. We screened this with, they're visibly uncomfortable. And I've warned them in a couple of the screenings that we've done. And that's one of the, I'm going to sidebar here for a second. Yeah. But that's one of the beautiful things that would happen. We brought so many people together through our screenings, and to go out and see these guys on both teams. Obviously, several of them were from the state of Iowa. We knew each other. We're either good friends today or respect their, watch their coaching careers, and that type of thing. But it's brought a lot of people together, and that's really in a lot of ways a major accomplishment. We had 1,200 people at our screenings, and the last one we had 450 people at the stadium at Iowa State. We had
that's great
packed house of 200 people at Bruce Kinseth Hilton Garden Inn in Iowa City. He sponsored our event and all that stuff. I mean, a lot of people just really came together. And what we were talking about Iowa fans, because they know they don't win the meet, and they think it's they may think it's some sort of propaganda or whatever piece, or it's not that at all. It's really about. I think anybody who's ever been part of a rivalry will get this.
Yeah. Yep.
And you still have days today that years later that you think about your rivals. Who you consider it. Go out there. It might be a coin flip as to who's going to win the match, but both guys are going to bring it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And the same thing can happen on a football field, basketball court. A race, anything like that. But I think if you have that type of mentality about it, and I think again, but these are people too, and they found ways to kind of get around or get away or get they've gone on to live their life. They've had successes, and some of them, that varies, but depending, they are all considered, most to wrestle on either one of these teams, you have to be considered a success in the sport.
Big time. And you bring up that, the guys have moved on. I mean, obviously they grow up, they, they graduated college, and there was one that was out on a trap shoot range with his daughter.
Yeah.
So you get a glimpse into the thing that they are now. It's beyond what, obviously, the wrestling mat. They've grown, and they have a unique perspective now of that rivalry and just that day, that duel, to be able to, sit back introspectively and kind of think about things where, like Royce Alger, not even watching the match ever, so on a video, and finally seeing it and being able to react to it and seeing that genuine reaction to it is entertaining. And then watching Kevin Dresser at the end of that episode where you guys end it with him laughing about him losing that penalty point. That's one of the best endings to an episode I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, we pick it right back up on the third episode with that, and the team point and all that stuff. But it's Kevin and Joe have a really good relationship today, and so that's what made that work, is that and the same with Royce and Bill. I mean, Bill Tate, he probably had one of the best months he did have the best month of wrestling I ever coached. He beat Johnny Johnson 13-3, and he pinned him, all right, in 2 different matches. And Johnny Johnson was legit, him from up in Wisconsin, all right. And he beat Rob Cole 8-0, all right, and beat Royce Alger 10-2, right?
Yeah, 2.
Yeah. So Billy, he had and Royce doesn't take very many, that's the worst beating he probably ever took in college, all right?
It was one of the last losses he ever took, I think.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah.
Because he went on to lose a couple times at the Nationals that year, and that was it. He was undefeated the next couple of years, and wins the national title at a weight above and a weight above that, so 67 and 77. But to get Royce's reaction with, I just knew it would be great, because he asked me, in there he goes, Jim Gibbons asked me whether I was 8-1 or 7-1 against Iowa guys in the duel, and he goes, well, which one are you going to do? I go, we're going to do the one you got beat in, right? And he goes, oh, okay. That's awesome. But he's priceless in this thing, and the world needs a hell of a lot more of Bill and Royce. Let's put it
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, that was it was a genuine reaction between him and Bill, because Bill was like, "Oh, look at that! I took you down right there." He goes, "Okay, I'll give you today's your day," kind of thing.
Yeah,
so that was
your day.
Yeah,
but
that was.
But the thing about that is that there was, if you didn't notice it, there's some what happened after that? Where did you go? There's a little bit of, and God, well, that really, they're both being, Bill was not, he was so humble in that situation.
Very.
And, we all have this aircraft carrier of pride, right?
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to turn it,
It does.
And that's part of that scene, all right? 30 minutes of those two together were the aircraft carrier of Royce's pride. And he's not alone, by any means.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Right.
It just turns around and it makes the turn, and, it makes the
little tip. That's right.
Yeah. It's like, but up until that point, it's sheer comedy, all right?
Yes. Yes, it is. And I think everybody explained that as well, talking about Royce, because I've met Royce a couple times going down to some of the duels and talking to him.
I talked to him today. Yeah.
He's just a character. I mean, the guy, I think he could make fun of or have fun with any situation he is in. So I wasn't surprised by how he reacted, but I think it was nice to see that because it's athlete to athlete, and
athlete to athlete, and those two, you had to be pretty good to go ahead and beat Royce at any age.
Correct.
last day you had to be in. And so it's like our guy kept wrestling, and
Yes.
that was the a big part of it, and that's one of the things that we were trying to get off. And when Billy says, and he goes, I didn't want to ever see that look that I got from my head coach Jim, right, when I came off the mat the first time.
Yeah, you don't want to see that look.
But anyway, yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, I just there were just moments like that all the way through this. I mean, with you know, and my brother and Greg Randall's match, it was the same, you know, the same type of vibe, and
Yep.
Krieger and Heffernan was you know, those guys were so good in both ways, and respectful to each other, and you know, and no, it was all good. I mean, we you know, I think we're so really thankful we got the guys that we did get. And
Yeah.
you know, think about this for a second. You got Dwayne Goldman, who dominated Eric Volker in that match.
Yep.
You know, and he did everything he could. You know, you just can't go through somebody that strong, but he tried.
Tried.
Yeah. Well, the next year he's the national champion.
Right.
2 years later, after that, he's national champion again. That's what you got to go through those things. All right. You got to have those moments in front of the people. It's got to mean something. All right. It's got to, you know, and you know, statewide television audience, and you know, not necessarily packed house that day, but pretty close. You know, they got the attendance figure wrong. There's no way there's 9,000 people in there.
There's a lot of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of people there.
A lot of people in there.
If Brad Penrith is up doing sprints there and he can't get across, all right, you know, there's a lot of people up there. There's an eyewitness, okay?
Right. Yeah. Right. So
no, it's just, it was so you know, we have a we kind of have a blueprint now to do this if we were in a position to do it again, but it takes a lot of resources, money and time, and you know, we had some people that were really special to us in that process. You know, Stephen P. Arkle, who did the colorization on this, has won 22 Emmys.
Sparkle.
You know, Sparkle, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And Yessian Sound, all right. They do, you know, you'll see their work on Super Bowl commercials. That you look up the Andy Warhol exhibit for Coca-Cola, and that soundtrack there is laid down by them, and they're I mean, they're huge, and these are all contacts of John's, and you know, my job as, I guess, the executive producer is just get everybody there, which, you know, to be honest with you, that's not an easy thing. And
no.
And then when it became apparent that we were going to have a rights squabble, that you know, the work that we did to free up this content, you know, and get everybody on the same page, recognizing that this is a good thing for the state of Iowa, and the long form of this needs to be shown out there to people. And, you know, okay, you can go ahead and cut it down to 2 hours, public television, and show it on your air, but we need to be able to let guys like Brad Crooks watch all 6 hours of it, because he's going to watch it 4 times.
4 times. 4 times. And it's going to go more. That's for sure. Yeah. I'm gonna have it memorized pretty soon. I'll tell you that much. Because I grew up knowing the Brad Penrith name. I grew up knowing Royce Alger, you know, things like that. I was 7 or 8 at the time, so this wasn't obviously a duel that I was able to just go and see at that time. So
that's the age I was when I was watching Dan Gable wrestle at the Armory.
Yep.
So,
yep.
You know, when we told you, we walked into the Armory, and that great smell of popcorn and cigarettes.
And now, just because, like, I think I told my son about that, he goes, cigarettes. I was like, you wouldn't believe where you could smoke back then. It was
everywhere,
a different time altogether. You could smoke in the doctor's office, I think, at that time. So when as you're going through and putting things together, what are your emotions as you're kind of, because I mean, you're interviewing guys, you're hearing some of their stories, and you're living, you know, a little, not living through it, but you're kind of rehashing this stuff. And like I mean, like I said, you're 26, but you guys are 19-1. So you guys are no slouches. You had the confidence of beast killers, and you killed the beast that day. What were your emotions going through this? How did you feel going through and getting this story out?
I just totally had to wear another hat, right? Okay, we had to get everybody there, all right, to get, you know, hey, we're going to be here. I'd like to talk to you here. Do you have a couple hours or 3 hours or whatever that we can do? And then some of those are one call closes, and other of those that we had to make arrangements and travel and find people. There were, for the most part, that was, you know, I called Ivan Mazel. I said, Ivan, you may not remember me. All right. And Jim Gibbons from Iowa. Do I remember? Of course I remember you. It was like, I remember how cold it was that day and all that stuff, and made a huge impression. It was a big deal for him as the Sports Illustrated fact checker to get that type of article. And, you know, back in the day, it was a huge coup for him. And so it helped him out in a very successful career. So, you know, a lot of these were, you know, reconnecting calls, and, you know, we had just a lot of people help us. Mike Doty was really helpful in helping with the Wrestling Museum, and helping get Gable and
Nice.
and facilitating everything, and helping them with we had a little lobbying effort with the state legislature. He helped us with. So, you know, the other guy who was really our executive producer, we had two guys that helped us out when we were kind of you know, in a bad way. We'd done all this work, put this rough cut together, and it didn't look like it was going to be an easy process. So we had Chris McGowan, who was the head of the Siouxland Chamber of Commerce. He put us in touch with Dustin Miller, who probably gave us at least 500 hours of legal work to help us through the rights process.
Wow.
Yeah, 500 hours. He's a 9-master attorney, and I think that's the number. It might be higher than that, but you know, that's what we did. We had no, we weren't doing this we were doing this to tell a story. We figured, well, if the story's good, everything else could take care of itself. And if this is quality, and so our mantra was basically fun and cool. It's got, you know, fun and cool. And I really believe that, you know, I like to think that the guys that wrestled for me, we worked hard and all that stuff, but we had fun in each other's company, and, and the trips and all that stuff that we took were, you know, and I know that was the same way for them too, because it was, you know, it was fun and cool. And you know, back then at that era, you know, a different era than you have right now, but nonetheless, had its, you know, fun moments and all that. And you know, now you get the perspective of, you know, 55, 56-year-old man who's in this duel now, right? What's their perspective of it as a guy who's seen more of life and lived a little bit more life, maybe has kids of their own, and, you know, a marriage or two. And you know, you know, that's what we wanted to, and at the end of the day, if this gets 100 more people to decide to officiate, officials in this, it gets 100 more.
It's another one,
you know, stick around and stay with the sport for a while. It gets 100 more guys to stay out for the sport, to, you know, and now men or women to stick with the sport. If it does some of those things, and consider coaching, and consider the lifelong impact that you can have with the sport. If it gets 100 more single mothers to keep their kids, that's why I want my son to do this. That's why I want my daughter to do this. I like what that does. I like what I see 35 years later from these men. You know, that's what then it's achieved its goal, or our goal, and it's fun and cool. It was great to do, and you know, we you know, to get out, you know, it wasn't until we just showed up every day and did the work. We weighed in. All right. Yeah. We weighed in figuratively. Figuratively. Right. Okay. And showed up and did the work. All right. Yeah. Whatever it took that day to go ahead and work. And really, we've been working at that for it took up, you know, 30, 40 hours a week, minimum, sometimes 70. Right. 80. All right. And the way John put this together and edited it and all that stuff in his peak hours, he's doing other projects at the same time, and doing this, you know, just editing alone, that takes 6 weeks. You know,
I can only imagine.
So, you know, and so this was a 2-man operation. Yeah. And, with the help of our, Sparkle and Yessie and Sound and our attorneys. So yeah, it takes 4 attorneys and 2 guys and some
That's
help.
it. Yeah.
So
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, so I think that, like I said, if it helps more people appreciate the sport better, get a better feel for it, that's great. I mean, we introduce you to a lot of characters that are, they're fun people, and like I said, the mantra was fun and cool.
And that's what wrestling is, honestly, to me, anyways. But wait,
Well,
so you had 2 brothers on the team, right?
Yeah.
So what was that? And you talked about you were the as the assistant, you were the recruiting guy, and going through just sitting down with them and doing, because I know one of your brothers was with Kevin Dresser, right? That was sitting with Kevin Dresser.
Yeah.
What did you sit with with them and kind of you guys have?
I let at that time that time it was time for John to take over, and it was kind of funny. We had about 10 questions that we asked each guy.
Yeah.
The same 10 questions.
Yep.
Okay. And it's kind of funny because you wouldn't really know that what were the 10 questions were when you sit there and look at what we got.
What they talked about,
What they talked about,
yeah.
So it's enough about what you're asking. It's going to end up being about what I want to talk about. So so no, it was I think it was kind of funny because I probably admitted this lately that I think I could have been, as head coach, you're now responsible for everybody in the program and all that.
Yeah.
And so I was coaching. They're both in 2 different spots. Jeff was a freshman trying to make the team, and then Joe was the returning national champion.
Yep.
And and I think I could have, he got hurt in the middle of the year, early in the second half of the year, and that you saw him kind of coming back after that, and he just needed a few more weeks of conditioning and all that stuff. And it's just that he finished 3rd in the country anyway. He was pretty darn good and had a great career as 4-time All-American, 4 times in the top 4, and nice. So national champion. And like I said, looking back at it, he just looks like a stud out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these guys did, but it's just like Joe in particular. It's just like he was. And Dresser did. I mean, that's a big deal for him. He won a big match there, and ended up being the number 1 seed, and that helped him, gave him a lot of confidence, and that was a huge thing for him. But I think it had that kind of that family thing going on, but I also just wanted to extend my family into being I had a bunch of little brothers, so and that worked for the most part, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously
I couldn't be their dad, and certainly my coach would have been like Coach Nichols was 68 when he retired, so he's like a grandfather figure,
and he was there at that duel as well too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
he's at all our duels. Yeah,
nice. And obviously he coached both you and Dan.
So he was we didn't really get into talking about Coach Nichols that much, but he was a commonality, and I think a lot of our what we had learned as I say we, Dan and I, he just didn't sweat a lot of details, right? Yeah. And sometimes, and that's probably any details at all. And I said this: if you probably had 5 meaningful conversations with him over your career, that was the over and under, right?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it was just a quiet to himself, but cared deeply about his team. There's no doubt who was in control of the program.
Yeah.
He wrestled. Yeah. I mean, the guys that wrestled in the 60s said, they always said, I wrestled for Nick, right? I wrestled for Nick. They never, the word Iowa State never came into I wrestled for Nick. I wrestled for Nick.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but I got done. I wrestled for Nick too.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we talk about the duel itself, and I think when you and I talked the first time, you're like Iowa fans that thinks that you also said it before that this is just a ha ha ha, we won this duel, but it's not. And
No.
you get to that last episode and it rolls
Well,
into
yeah, the story just takes people there, all right.
Mhm.
But I really feel that uh, with Gable's attachment to Iowa State, how we define that,
Mhm.
right? And that's just history, and that's Dan talking about his time in Ames.
Yeah.
And then um, the fact that this ends up becoming about Gable, it morphs into Gable in the 9 in a row perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and to where now that they're in the conversation as one of the greatest teams ever,
Mhm.
and with 5 national champions and a runner-up, and 2 guys that end up winning nationals the following year, Royce and Rico,
Mhm.
as place winners there, and then didn't even have you know 2 of their guys that Mark Sendlinger had a phenomenal career as a
Yeah.
football player and a 2-time All-American wrestler, and then of course Matt Eglin, who was an NCAA. What the number could have been, okay?
Yeah. Yep.
And we're looking at like this year we're looking at Penn State being heavily favored, okay,
Heavily.
heavily favored, and teams that are kind of like the teams were back in '86, maybe 2-3 guys that you can count on, but maybe not 4 or 5
Yep.
guys that you can count on to maybe get enough points to kind of cut that spread
Yep.
a little bit. We could be looking at that record being broken, and we sit there and watch the tournament, and they got to 60 points spread, and you're
Yep.
going to go, well, holy cow, Gable got that team to 72,
Yeah.
right? Pretty much the same scoring system. So it's like, yeah. So I mean, that becomes. I really think, think about this. They got beat 3 weeks earlier, and then they roll up the biggest spread between 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And how did that happen? I think the guys tell the story, right?
Yeah.
They didn't lose confidence in themselves. They didn't, nobody panicked,
Right.
right? Did you work harder? Yes. Was it punitive? Not really. All right. It was all designed, again, whatever he needed to do when he needed to do it.
They bought in. They
Yeah, they
bought
bought
in on
in.
it. Yeah.
And I think that, but like watching that and then having our team go through that, and we tell the story about we got together afterwards and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and um I'm just really, you can't describe it. Again, as I said, to make this about 87 would be very self-serving, right,
Mhm.
for me.
Sure. Yep.
But you see glimmers of why we got to where we got to the next year,
The
just
next year,
because
yeah.
of the approach that we took, with the approach we were taking that year. Because again, we were a program with a lot of pride, and we wanted to be the one stop street.
Yep.
There's going to be a street that's going to go a long ways now in sport today. Why is the dual relevant? Is because we see it happening again before our very eyes. Okay,
Yes.
and okay, so who's going to be the next team that guys, the coaches, and everybody else buys into it, and
Yep.
just sits there, go, you know what? We can't rely on just having a couple of champions. We got to blow the doors off of them, right?
Right. Yep.
You know,
Yep.
so,
Yep. I agree.
and that's and I don't see that team out there yet.
Not yet. I mean, so you like Penn State, like you brought up, maybe they do something like that this year, but I don't know. After
Yep.
watching a couple other duels, I'm not sure that'll happen. But I like the film. I like the docu series. I like every aspect. Like I was telling you earlier, I really started getting into more of the Iowa State guys' mindset and state of mind through the docu series and starting to listen to them because there were wins that happened that shouldn't have happened. On paper, anyways, as far as looking at the accomplishments that the Iowa guys had versus Iowa State guys, but they had heart and they pushed through and they persevered through certain situations that you just don't see all the time. And I think it makes that story even greater knowing of the stories that were in between there. I mean, just
Yeah.
talking about weight
I'm glad.
cutting, one guy was a little light, things like
Yeah,
that. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, because when you're a young coach, okay, I'm 26 when I had that job,
yeah,
all right? And if you don't have performances like that, all right, people, did we hire the right guy? did we, if you don't have everybody buying into it, or if they get in trouble downtown or whatever, if they, occasionally there's stuff like that happens,
Sure.
Uh, uh, if all that stuff becomes cumulative and you don't see what you saw there, all right,
Mhm.
I ain't living long in Iowa State back then. That team meant so much to me from the standpoint of they did everything that I asked them to do, and
Yeah.
and in some cases, I think um, they felt like they had it on the line too. They bought in to the
Yep.
point where, whatever, they knew that what we wanted to do was the best for them, and it wasn't an ego thing. It was just trying to help them become as good as they possibly could be, and they responded. And when you're coaching or your first year and you have a team that responds like that and doesn't, well, we used to do it this way, we used to do it that way, or whatever. I could tell them that, no, we didn't, because I was here and we were doing, we just got better at doing that. But they bought into the expectations and they wanted it for themselves, and that's the best thing. And that team meant a lot to me. And then the following year when we won nationals, I mean, I didn't really, you eliminate a lot of that talk why you hired a young guy.
Yep, and got it done. The other thing the unique thing that I think, the most unique thing, you had the referee available for interview to talk about the matches. And I think it was important that he brought up the fact that, you're on Iowa Public Television, coach or refereeing a large duel, and you want to make sure you get it right, because no one gets to see referees making calls like this, right? No one gets to see this kind of stuff. You want to make sure you got it right. I still argue the being out of bounds, shoulders being in. I think he was in bounds, but it was a good call. Him being able to be mat side where he's telling someone to go, hold on, and you can see him rewinding it through his head and playing it while he's there. And
I like that about Phil. Yeah, I like
no
that about
takedown,
Phil.
no take. I was like, that takes balls.
Yeah, it does, but it's like my brother Jeff said. He says that if he hadn't called it, that's why we named the episode "Nice Call, Phil." Right? Yeah. but my brother said he'd still be there, right?
Such a unique perspective.
Still be on his back, right?
Yeah.
That it was kind of funny because there's a shot behind it. You always got to look at the front table, and if you look there's a guy by the name of Todd Stillwell who's looking at this, and he's going. This match is going along. They're going to get a decision and all that stuff, but they could have got the fall right back right there, because there's no way Jeff stopping that. That was
right.
the only thing that saved him was the whistle, but that's the way they called it back then. But and Gable was great. He goes, he was like, well, that must have been the rule back then, and that was the way it was. It's like, you were pretty calm there. You didn't really get too worked up. I mean, that was a big moment in the match, and he was good.
Well, I think that's what was said too, is that someone needed to fight for me because Gable wasn't standing up and fighting for me.
That's why Randall is the OW. All right.
Yeah.
In my mind, I mean, if I had to say who's the OW, all right.
Yeah.
From where he started, he's got a just unassuming interview, but where we didn't close. He helped us close the how we were going to finish this thing.
Yeah.
Where'd the stories go? Okay.
Yep.
Well, his basically his part in this was helped us basically close it out. We wouldn't have got there without Greg Randall.
Great.
And I keep on telling him, I said, man, you're the OW in this thing, and he says no human being would do that to another human being. Gable might,
Yeah,
he looks at the camera, and he's got this this look of just wild look. He's just perfect. That we really were tickled that we could bring him, that character, to life. He's a great guy. Yeah,
I did comedy for a little bit, and I'd be willing to have him or Penrith on stage doing comedy.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Penrith was his stories. and coming back into the wrestle off where he had, he said, I basically had all of Bettendorf there. There's 1,000 people from Bettendorf there, and I got to wrestle them. And he said, it wasn't like it was, it wasn't like we're going to have a wrestle off. It took him probably a day and a half to find Paul, and he probably didn't, that was, the running thing, and just and you could see and hear Penrith probably talking back to Gable,
right?
And
I could see that.
Yeah. Now we're gonna have a wrestle off, right? I was wondering what I was gonna do, all right, and then, yeah. So anyway, this whole thing, I mean, again, for us to get this on all 4 streaming services and all that, to make it easy for people to watch, we are, we just to let we couldn't have done this with, we did 5 screenings. We did, Sioux City, Iowa City, Ames, Waterloo, and Des Moines, and theaters and stadiums and hotel lobby. So we've had, it's probably 1,200 people watch it in the screening format, just an episode or so, and just get together. So it's brought a lot of people together, and we couldn't have done that without guys like we showed this to the Wrestlers in Business Network, almost 2 years ago in the spring before the Nationals.
Yeah.
And a guy by the name of Larry Conley watched it one time and gave us $5,000. Right.
Wow.
And watched one episode. Rob Larimore, who set it up as a generous donor for us. I mean, so this has moved people, and I think that's been cool. Reynolds Kramer from Fairway food stores here in Iowa and surrounding states. Probably got a Fairway up close by where you are.
Yep.
But it's like a good friend of mine that helped sponsor us and helped us go ahead and put these screenings together. They brought a lot of people back together, teammates.
Nice.
Had seen each other in 30 years or whatever the number is. They ended up for both schools for that matter.
Yeah.
And but I really think it just becomes a time capsule of what wrestling was like back at that time period here at a very important time. And when Gable wins and his team win the 86 Nationals and set that record. And unbeknownst to them, when you're watching that interview with Frank Gifford and Dan Gable, you don't get the feeling that there's anything stopping them from putting it together for a long period of time. And we get it done the next year.
Yeah.
And so that's what's, they're just little seeds like that are just cool. But it's, we put everything into our dual foundation, that we get from these screenings, and maybe someday we might get to do something else, but it's out there forever now,
forever.
It's out there forever. It's on Amazon Prime. It's on Apple iTunes. It's on Google. So you've got all these major screening platforms that it's on right now that you can go ahead and access.
Yeah.
And to be able to watch it, it's $9.99.
Yep.
And you watched it. What would you tell somebody about it?
Oh man, I would honestly, because you speak about the rivalry thing, right? And to me, that was the epitome of what was going on. But then as you watch, there's so much more to it. There's storyline after storyline. I mean, to me, the one that sticks out in my head specifically is the Penrith story about having to wrestle Glenn, and Glenn having to drop 12, 15 pounds that day to wrestle off. Like, just little things like that stick out in my head anyways. I would tell someone that if you want to watch highly competitive and high level athletes talk about something that they went through that may have been a life-changing type of thing for them, and watch a rivalry unfold, this is definitely what you want to watch for sure. And at the end of the day, you get to see high level athletes reacting to something that either went their way or didn't go their way. There's a lot of emotion. It's a roller coaster of emotions for, I think, anybody that would watch it. Here's the other thing though too. I don't know if someone who doesn't know wrestling would be able to get that out of it. If they don't understand how a rivalry like that works. Wrestling is a different beast when it comes to the atmosphere that it brings, and the type of training alone that goes into wrestling is completely different. So someone to watch it and sit down, for me to explain it to them, I would just tell them that if you like storylines and you love characters, there's plenty of them in here. Plenty
Yeah.
of them in this documentary. And
Well, for the most part, it's really not about the wrestling.
right.
Yeah, the wrestling is by design, not because we wanted to, invite people into it who've never been a part of the sport. Okay, I understand that a little bit better now,
Yep.
right? I
Yep.
understand. So if it becomes about technique, and it becomes about strategy and what happened in a match and all that other stuff, and what
Yep.
I was thinking at that point in time,
Right.
that's not
Right.
what it's about.
No.
That's not where we go.
No,
And
and they didn't even, honestly, the guys didn't even really talk like that about the
no,
match.
they don't.
It was like, oh, you'd see their reaction to it,
Yeah,
but they were still telling a different story. It wasn't
yeah.
a, oh, if I could have gotten a little lower on my shot on that one, might have been a couple times. That was it.
Yeah, right.
That was it.
That's not and that's not going to bring a wider audience
Nope.
into it. But so we've had people that have screened this that never watched a wrestling match before, or meet, or that have no, and they're, like I said, they're intrigued by the characters, the
Yep.
people, and everybody's, heard. You don't have to go too far to, everybody's heard the name Gable, and
Right.
this is a significant. It's pretty cool how I think Coach is pretty proud of what we did here.
Good.
I know
Good.
he is. Yeah,
I
and
know.
I think
I mean, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, pride, I don't know if I can put pride into it, because I don't have skin in the game, but am thoroughly impressed with the guys.
yeah,
This is, like you said, I mean, there's emotions that are involved in it, but at the end of the day, these guys grew as characters and as people, and as they have families and things like that, and to be able to get the insight of a high level athlete that it's in a grueling sport, to be able to just get their insight. And like you said, the storylines, I like stories about happy vans and sad vans. Those are the stories I want to hear about, and whether or not they're true or not, the mystique that goes behind a lot of this stuff. So they left you also sometimes with the, I want more.
yeah,
Wait, there's more. I want to know more. I want to know more. So I'm to the point to where, like, I want to reach out to Penrith now. I want to talk to him about wrestling and see what he thinks, because
yeah,
they leave you with so much left on the table to, like, hear or talk about, that don't necessarily even have to do with the duel, but they bring that out, and that telling stories like that really brings people even more into something like that, like a documentary. So it was really great to see the amount of guys that were willing to sit down and do it. I think it's a feat in itself, is just contacting guys and then traveling, sitting down with them on a golf course, or going to their barn and sitting in their barn. It's a lot of work, and it's your brother's barn. I knew that, but as far as it's a lot of work, and for
yeah,
those guys to be willing to kind of sit down, and they understood the importance. You could tell,
yeah,
they knew the importance. I think, what was it, Randall was talking about 16 to 15. And I'm like, what are
yeah,
you talking about? 16 to 15. Then he
yeah,
starts explaining. I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
yeah,
That brings even more out. That
yeah,
that doesn't even really have to do with wrestling at all. It's just about, hey, who else did that?
yeah,
Now I'm gonna go on my phone and I'm gonna start looking up history. I want to see
yeah,
what's going. So now you've
right,
exposed people. They want to know more and they want to find out more. So you're drawing people even more into wrestling, which I think is pretty cool. It's a cool way to do it. So
yeah,
I appreciate you coming on, Jim. I'm gonna get out
yeah,
of your hair. You got family time, things to do, and things like
yeah,
that. But I want to leave you with this. If you ever want to do something, let me know, because I would love to be involved in it. I would love to sit down, and I'm so much a history buff about wrestling
hmm,
that I've been watching middle school wrestling meets from 1986 from Utah. I
wow,
just like watching wrestling. So it doesn't matter what it is. You let me know if you guys ever need a hand with something. I would be more than willing to help you guys out.
yeah.
But
Well,
you
we
got any
appreciate.
lasting thoughts?
Well, yeah, I appreciate you, Brad, because we're trying to, this isn't high budget item here. We figured that if once we got it out there, that it would try to organically grow, and it's done that, and it's achieved a lot of goals, particularly the kind of the intangibles about bringing a lot of people together, and that's was the real cool thing. And in fact, but it takes it takes the other things, some of the things that we've learned about this, that the wrestling media crowd, they're just into what they do. I understand what it is. This is something that's a little bit different. This is, may not fit into the box, and to get busy people to sit down and to watch 6 hours of it. But really, you can't. I don't think you can understand what's going on today. All right, in full context without going back and taking a look about what happened in '86.
Yeah,
with the 9 in a row. And because everybody say, well, what's going to stop it? What's going to, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it can be stopped right now, but by something. And the only way it can be stopped is somebody raises their level to the level that Penn State. I'm not rooting for that to stop. I didn't root for it to stop back then. All right.
Yep.
We just had to get ourselves to that level. Whether you can sustain it for a long period of time or not, but that you can't understand about what's going on today. All right, without having some little background of when it was happening before.
That's right.
And actually even happening before that with Myron and Oklahoma State teams, and that whole process. There was something that was going on that was unique. It was not just a call to personality. There were some structural things that happened, and I think that personality is also part of it too. But wrestling. You watched it 4 times.
Yep.
You wanted to get together and talk about it. I can't be more happy to be able to talk about something that we put so much effort in, that we're very proud of here, that brought a lot of people together. We put everything into our foundation, that we're running it out of this, the dual foundation. And, so that, if we make any money off that, it all goes into that. And, we're going to do a little bit more advertising as we head into post-wrestling shock syndrome, all right, the postseason, and we'll go from there. But I thoroughly appreciate you watching this, and it sounds like you must have been satisfied after the first one. You wouldn't have done it the second time. So
I was
good. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, you bet. I'm gonna leave us with this. You guys go check out The Duel. It's on Google Play. It's on Prime Video. It's on Apple TV. It's on iTunes. I mean, if you can't find it, call me. I'll direct you to it, because it's everywhere.
And it's also on. You can find it through our website, The Duel. The Duel.
Yep.
.org. All right.
DUAL, not DUEL.
Yeah. We're not shooting people.
Right.
Right. And that's kind of funny because people revert back. Well, it's a duel, all right. No, we're not shooting people. Nobody's dying afterwards. Nope. All right, okay. It's the double entendre of the two, right?
Yes,
the two programs.
Two programs, two storylines.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Yeah,
balloons just
there.
I don't know.
That was cool. Yeah.
That was neat. It was a good time for it.
That was because I did this, or what?
Maybe. I don't know. Is that your phone?
No.
I don't know. But it's a good way to end it. But Jim, again, I appreciate it. We will we'll leave people with that. Go check out The Duel 1986. It's more than just a wrestling story. Thanks, guys.